And we're continuing with the first chapter of The Whispering Mountain by Joan Aiken. Owen took the Dandos to his grandfather's house. His grandfather turned them away and was very upset that he brought gypsies to the museum just when they got the harp. And we'll pick up where we cut off last time. "Now, sir, what have you to say for yourself?" barked Mr. Hughes. "Rogues and gypsies off the road, indeed. Never let such a thing occur again, I beg. And now, just now, too, when we are housing such a treasure in the museum. Thoughtless, reckless lad, I trust you didn't speak of the harp. I've heard, too, we were hobnobbing with that shady pair." Yes, I did, grandfather." Mr. Hughes raised his hands to heaven. "May all the saints give me patience. Why was ever saddled with such a millstone round my neck? And now I must go off to see his grace, and leave you alone in charge of the harp. I've got a good mind to take it with me, inclement though the weather be. But no," he added half to himself, "in the circumstances that would hardly be wise. Until it is certain how matters stand, however, let me be sure that all doors and windows are double locked, barred, and chained. I have enough to contend with, dear knows, in this town of cockatrices, without risking the loss of my good name, boy. Follow me." In sullen silence, Owen accompanied his grandfather as they made the rounds of the windows and the front and back doors. All were securely fastened. "Very well," Mr. Hughes said at last. "Now, when I am gone, unbar to no one at all, do you understand me, boy? No respectable person should be abroad at this hour in any case. If there should be a knock, open the slot on the outer door and ask the business of whoever it is and tell them to return in the morning. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "And don't show me that sulky face. When I am gone, you may occupy yourself usefully by dusting the glass cases and polishing the Roman, Saxon, and Danish weapons. You will find your supper in a bowl. Do not neglect to stoke the brazier. There will be no occasion for you to enter the library. I do not wish to come back and find you with your nose in a book and no work done. Do not retire to bed until I return. I shall not be late." "No, sir." "No, sir, yes, sir," snapped his grandfather. "I would wish to have less of your yes, sir, and a more obliging open manner and honest will to please. But it is no matter. We cannot, I suppose, fabricate a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I will take my departure, then. Let me hear you make fast the door behind me. I have the key to the rear." He stepped out into the night, and Owen shot home the heavy bolts. When his grandfather's brisk footsteps had died away across the yard, Owen picked up a feather duster and began listlessly passing it over the glass cases which held Roman pottery, geological specimens, birds' eggs, and old coins. These, with a stuffed sheep, a crossbow, some iron tools, some unknown but probably instruments of torture, occupied the two main rooms. The library, a smaller room, shelved from floor to ceiling, housed volumes of sermons and reference books. A sign on its door said, "Sleepers' tickets, 5. Not transferable. No sleeping in the library without a ticket." At the rear of the museum, a series of small offices had been adapted by Owen's grandfather with the minimum of alteration to serve as kitchen, washroom, and broom closet. Owen slept in the broom closet, his grandfather in the main hall on a truckle bed, erected at night beside the helmet of Owen Glendover, which, up till now, had been their most valuable exhibit. The place was bleak and cheerless enough, its sole source of warmth being the small charcoal brazier which served Owen and his grandfather as a cooking stove. Some rush dips gave a flickering, uncertain light and threw odd-shaped shadows. In general, Owen did not object to being left alone at night in the museum. His grandfather's occasional absences on town business gave him indeed a welcome sense of freedom, but this evening he felt a strange anxiety and uneasiness. He tried to tell himself that this was merely because of the encounter with Waffa's gang, or the second unhappy parting from Erebus and her father, but there was something more to it than that. Taking a rush dip, he once again made the rounds of all doors and windows, listening at each, but there was nothing to be heard save the moaning of the gale outside as it swept over the bare grassy mountain and licked round the corners of the museum. The wind itself did not penetrate, but the stout little building quivered at each new blast, so that the air inside was agitated and the candle flames were never steady. Having satisfied himself that all was secure, Owen wandered back to the kitchen, where his supper, a bowl of flummery, cold, sour, jellied oatmeal, was set out for him. He had no appetite for it, and covered it with a dish to wait for breakfast. His heart ached at the thought of Erebus and her father out on the windy mountainside. Would Galahad still be plodding on his way toward Devil's Leap, or would they have decided to stop and camp somewhere for the night? He imagined them snug by their stove, Galahad, good easy horse, turned out to grass, a blanket which Erebus had embroidered with his name, Gwalfylcht, strapped round his barrel sides. Tom and Erebus would be telling stories, since it was one of Tom's talking days, or playing verse games, swapping rhymes, or they would be singing together, treble and tenor, accompanied by Erebus on the crwth. Hymns, probably, for Tom dearly loved a good hymn. Many a time had Owen heard him booming out the strains of Lalanfair, or Hyfrydal, or some other favourite, conducting himself so vigorously that he swayed about like a tree in a hurricane, and seemed likely to lift himself clear off the ground, plucking his thoughts away from this picture which presented such a contrast to the chill, silent museum. Owen busied himself with stoking the brazier and polishing the weapons, but his thoughts would not be checked. They raced away from him like a pack of hounds, and their cry was that he would be happier anywhere else, working as a clerk, as a laborer, in a field, in the mines, anywhere rather than this cheerless place, where he was barely tolerated by his grandfather, and treated as an interloper by the boys of Pennygaff. Suddenly, almost without being aware of it, Owen found that he had come to a decision. He would stay here no longer. He would go to Port Malin and try to find employment on a ship. He would have liked, above everything else in the world, to join Erebus and her father in their roving life, but he was much too proud to run after them begging to be taken up. What could he offer them? Nothing. Of what use was he? None at all. He was unhandy, short-sighted, timid, and the only subject on which he would claim to be well informed was navigation, since he had been born and brought up on Her Majesty's sloop Thrush. No, a ship was the only answer. With neat dispatch he packed his possessions in a bundle, 2 new shirts, some hose, a comb, a lock of his dead mother's hair, and his greatest treasure, a little book which had been given to him by his father. It was called Arithmetic, Grammar, Botany, and Sea. These pleasing sciences made familiar to the capacities of youth. And his other treasure, a compass, always hung round his neck on a cord. It would be needful to leave a note for his grandfather. No easy task. Owen wasted 5 or 6 sheets of paper in false starts before achieving a message that satisfied him. Dear Grandfather, I feel I do not truly belong here, and can only add to your troubles. But, so I shall not give you the burden of my presence any longer. And all of these S's are written as F's, but I'm going to read them as S's. But shall try to find employment on a ship so as to follow my father's calling. I am sorry to be obliged to carry some of your property with me, he meant the shirts, but will find money to repay as soon as I am in profession to do so. That you may long continue to enjoy the blessings of health is my sincere wish. Pray, rest assured that I am very sensible of the many kindnesses you have shown me, and though I feel I am undeserving of them, I am and shall always remain your most dutiful grandson. Now, where to leave the note so that his grandfather would be sure to discover it in due course, but not too soon. After some consideration, Owen decided to put it under the harp of Tier 2. His grandfather's first act in the morning was always to lift the cover off this treasure, but on his return late at night he was unlikely to do more than glance in and make sure that it was still in its place. At this moment, Owen was startled by a single loud bang on the front door. His heart shot into his mouth. Could Hwaffa and the others, discovering that Mr. Hughes, whom the town boys disliked but held in considerable respect, was from home, have agreed that this would be a good time to raid the museum? Or could Erebus and her father have returned? No, sadly Owen dismissed that idea.